Have you ever stayed somewhere you knew was breaking you? Not a physical place, but a job, a relationship, a life you built. And you stayed just because you were terrified of what would happen if you left. Afraid of starting over from scratch. Afraid of disappointing people who thought you had it all together. Afraid, most of all, of being completely and utterly alone. This is a story of a man who learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do in life isn't to hold on tighter, but to finally let go and walk away. Michael Carter was 35 years old, and he was exhausted in a way that no amount of sleep could ever fix. Every single morning, he would wake up at 6 a.m., stare at the cracks in the ceiling of his small apartment, and feel the same heavy thought pressing down on his chest. Is this really my life? On paper, everything looked fine. He had a stable, respectable job at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. A decent paycheck that paid the bills. A long-term relationship. A predictable routine that made him look successful to the outside world. But inside, Michael felt like a ghost. He felt completely and totally empty. His job, once a source of pride, now just drained him. The endless meetings felt pointless, circling the same ideas over and over. His creativity, the very thing he loved most about himself, had shriveled up, replaced by tight deadlines, constant pressure, and this silent, unspoken competition with his colleagues. He was just going through the motions, a robot programmed for productivity. And his relationship. That's what hurt the most. Emily had been with him for 8 years. 8 years. 8 years. They rarely argued. That was true, but they rarely laughed either. Their conversations felt shallow, like they were just skimming the surface of life, talking about groceries and bills. They never talked about their dreams anymore. Whenever Michael gathered the courage to talk about the unhappiness he felt, about this growing void inside him, Emily would just brush it off. "You're overthinking things, Michael," she'd say. "This is what adult life looks like. It's not supposed to be exciting all the time." So Michael stayed. Not because he was happy. Not because he was in love. He stayed because the thought of walking away was terrifying. It felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing what was at the bottom. The familiar misery was safer than the unknown. One Friday evening, after another draining week, Michael sat alone in his car, parked right outside his apartment building. The engine was off. The street was quiet, wrapped in the gentle hush of twilight. Rain began to tap softly against the windshield, each drop like a tiny, persistent finger. He should have gone inside. Dinner was waiting. The routine was waiting. Instead, he just sat there, staring at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. His eyes looked so tired, so much older than 30. And then, suddenly, without any warning, his chest tightened. His breath became shallow and quick. His hands, resting on the steering wheel, started to shake uncontrollably. It wasn't a loud, dramatic breakdown you see in the movies. It was quiet. It was private. It was a silent implosion. Tears he didn't even know were there began to fill his eyes, blurring the streetlights outside as one single thought repeated over and over in his mind. I'm disappearing. I am literally disappearing from my own life. That night, for the first time in a long time, Michael didn't scroll through his phone. He didn't numb himself with TV. He walked into the dark apartment, sat on the floor with his back against the couch, and finally asked himself the one question he had been avoiding for years. If nothing changes, if this is it for the next 10, 20, 30 years, can I live like this forever? The answer hit him with the force of a physical blow. It terrified him, because deep down, in the quietest part of his soul, he knew the truth. No, he couldn't. The next day, Michael got in his car and drove to his father's house. Ever feel stuck, like you're living someone else's life? Michael felt that way every single day. A good job, a stable relationship, a life that looked perfect on the outside, but inside, he was suffocating. One day, sitting with his dad, he finally said it out loud. "I think I'm miserable." His father listened. "Hus. Listen it." Then, after a long silence, he asked a question that changed everything. "Then why are you still there?" Michael's answer was the one we all give. "Because leaving would destroy everything." But his dad's reply hit him like a lightning bolt. He said, "Son, Staying in the wrong place destroys you slowly. Walking away hurts fast, but it heals. Think about that for a second. We're so afraid of the quick, sharp pain of leaving that we choose the slow, crushing pain of staying. Michael asked, "What if I regret it?" His father looked him straight in the eye and said, "You will regret the years you lose more than the comfort you leave." That was the spark. But walking away isn't like in the movies. There's no dramatic music. There's just fear. His first step was the hardest. He told his partner, Emily, the truth. "I'm not happy," he said. She was hurt, angry. "You're throwing away years," she cried. And he knew she was right, in a way. But he replied, "I'm throwing away myself if I stay." Ending that relationship felt like tearing out a piece of his own heart. Next was the job. He didn't just storm out. He started applying for roles that actually excited him, roles that scared him, roles that felt like him. And one morning, with shaken hands, he finally hit send on his resignation email. His heart was pounding. But for the first time in years, he felt free. Now, here's the part nobody talks about. The messy middle. The part after you walk away, but before things get better. Michael felt completely lost. His savings dwindled. Rejection emails flooded his inbox. Some nights, loneliness was a physical weight. He'd lie awake thinking, did I make a huge mistake? But something was different. The misery was gone. In its place was uncertainty, fear, but also possibility. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building. He started small. A freelance project here, a coffee meeting there. He reconnected with old friends he'd lost touch with. He started hiking again, something he'd loved but given up. Slowly, the fog began to lift. He landed a job that didn't pay as much at first, but it made him feel alive. He met new people, not to replace what he'd lost, but to discover new parts of himself. One evening, sitting alone in his new, smaller apartment, he realized something profound. He wasn't happy yet, not completely, but he was hopeful, and he hadn't felt hopeful in years. The journey wasn't about finding a perfect new life overnight. It was about reclaiming his own. It was about choosing the sharp, healing pain of change over the slow, soul-crushing decay of staying put. If you're standing at that same crossroads, feeling that same quiet misery, remember Michael's story. Remember what his father said. Walking away hurts fast, but it heals. Staying destroys you slowly. The bravest thing you can ever do is choose to heal. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it, because the person you're saving is you. Even in fear, he felt honest. He started waking up earlier not for work, but for himself. He walked. He wrote. He read books he had ignored for years. Slowly, he felt something return. Hope. 3 months later, Michael received an email. A small creative agency had seen his portfolio online. They didn't promise a huge salary. They didn't promise stability. What they did promise was purpose. The interview felt completely different from any he'd had before. They asked him what he believed in. They asked what stories he wanted to tell. They asked what kind of life he wanted to build for himself. When they offered him the role, Michael sat quietly for a moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a big paycheck, but it felt right. It felt like home. Fast forward 1 year. Michael stood in front of a mirror. Same face. Same man, but the eyes looking back at him were different. Calmer. Stronger. Alive. His life wasn't perfect. Of course not. But it was his. He had learned something incredibly powerful through this journey. Walking away didn't make him weak. It made him honest. And that honesty, that raw truth, changed absolutely everything. If you're listening to this right now and feeling stuck, I want you to hear this. If you're staying somewhere out of fear, not out of love, if your heart is quietly, or maybe even loudly, asking for more, the courage to walk away is not about quitting. It's about choosing yourself. It's about trusting that you deserve a life that doesn't drain your soul every single day. Sometimes, the life you truly want is waiting for you on the other side of the decision you were most afraid to make. And if Michael's story touched you, please remember this. You're not too late. You're not broken. You are just one brave choice away from a completely different life. Thanks so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.